Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile. Today we're going to be revisiting the Vaporeon VMAX archetype with a little bit of an updated list. This is a list I covered at the beginning of my deck profiles. I think it was my 4th or 5th one. It's a list I quite enjoy playing, a little bit of a fun rogue deck in the expanded format. And while it can't handle everything, especially things that can do 330 damage, it can at least get you some really fun and lengthy games. There is a few things to change about the list that I have changed since the original time I posted the list, so we're going to talk about the list once again in its full entirety, and I'm going to talk about what I mainly changed. We do start, there it goes. Start with the 2-2 Vaporeon line. I love this alternate art, so I went and traded for it. Very nice alternate art Vaporeon with the triple draw. It's actually a really good attack. Draw 3, and I've actually used Splash Jump for 3 for 90 is really bad. However, I've used it, so it's not completely worthless. Triple Draw, though, is actually a really good starting move, so absolutely love that. And we evolve into Vaporeon VMAX, which is the strategy we're going to base around with Bubble Pod. Put a water Pokemon from your pile onto your bench. If you do, attach up to 3 water energy from your pile to that Pokemon. And we're going to be getting back Golduck, and we're going to be getting back even other Vaporeon if need be. Max Torrent, if your opponent's active Pokemon has any damage counters on it, this attack does 100 more damage. It's actually a pretty good attack for cleaning up in the late game. However, it is a little tough to get going, so I will warn you about that. But we're mainly basing around Bubble Pod here. We're just going to loop Bubble Pod over and over again. And we're looping it with this Golduck, 2 copies of the Golduck. I have used Aqua Edge before. I've beaten a Mad Party deck by just taking 6 prizes with Aqua Edge, so, you know, anything's possible. But we're mainly here for the Entangled Dive. Discard each player's active Pokemon and all cards. So, what you do is you do Bubble Pod, you get a Golduck and 3 energy, and then you run up with Golduck into the active, and you discard your opponent's active Pokemon. And then they get really pissed, and you're just going to repeat that over and over while healing your Vaporeon until they either don't have Pokemon, don't have energy, and then you clean up the game. One of the ways we clean up the game is with Bunnelby, with its Burrow. Discard the top card of your opponent's deck. You can do that twice with its Omega Barrage, allowing you to attack twice a turn. So if you just clean up the game, you can just burrow your opponent once they run out of resources to attack you. Also can be good for putting on some early pressure if you don't want to really set up your Golducks, or maybe you're just in a bit of a stalemate. You have your Golducks play, your opponent's not coming up, and you don't really want to you know, be running your Vaporeons at risk and constantly looping the Golduck if not need be, so you just start burrowing and getting rid of the resources manually. That'll work. Rototiller is also great. Shuffle a card from your pile into your deck. This deck is very resource intensive. Every single game is going to really depend on the way you use your resources and how efficiently you can get your Lusamines off. So if you can use Bunnelby's Rototiller to recover things like Counter Catcher and Versus Seeker, your item cards that are not recoverable by Lusamine, it's going to make a really big difference, so definitely keep that in mind. The biggest thing I don't like about Bunnelby is that it has that very hefty 2 retreat cost, meaning it can get stuck early on. Going into the supporters, we play 3 copies of Marnie, just a little bit of hand disruption, and it allows us to set up. Each player shuffles a hand, puts it on the bottom of the deck, and then you draw 5, your opponent draws 4. Just very good draw for you, very bad disruption for your opponent, because they're not going to like getting put to a 4-card hand. Hopefully we can slow them down in the early game. One of this deck's biggest weaknesses is that it has to evolve into Vaporeon VMAX for the first one, meaning that if your Vaporeon Vs just get KO'd before they can evolve, that's pretty tough, so we're here to slow our opponent down in the early game. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but Marnie is part of that. 1 copy of Avery here. If your opponent just benches out their Pokemon, a lot of times they're going to be able to throw a lot of junk Pokemon at you while they buy for time. We don't really want that. So we play Avery here, draw 3 cards. If you drew any cards in this way, your opponent discards Pokemon from their bench until they have 3. So, if your opponent fills up their bench, I was playing against a single strike deck a while ago, and they just kept on giving me Houndours. I didn't want the Houndours, I didn't want the Stonjourners. They're just throwing these junk Pokemon at me so they can build up their big Urshifu. I used Avery on them 1 turn, got rid of 2 Pokemon from their bench, and then I found Guzma a little bit later on to gust up the single strike Pokemon. So Avery just allows you to put your opponent on a bit more of a timer, threaten them resources even more. Though be careful, it's not always great because your opponent can also discard Pokemon they don't want to play. 2 copies of Irida. Search your deck for a water Pokemon and an item card, reveal them and put them into your hand. This is actually really good in this deck because mainly we just, in the early game, need water Pokemon and item cards. And, you know, getting back getting a Vaporeon out of the deck early game is going to be really good. Getting a Battle Compressor out of the deck early game is going to be really good. And getting in the late game, things like Max Potion and Counter Catcher, really, really strong. Originally in this deck, I ran a Miltank from Astral Radiance, just a nice V-Guard Pokemon, essentially saying, hey, you can't KO this thing because this thing's immune to Vs. And there's a lot of Vs going around that could do that big 330 damage, like Shadow Rider, for instance. So it would just allow us to buy a bit of time. I have cut the Miltank because we only had one ability in the entire deck. And if you can cut your one ability card from the entire deck and play one of the best supporters in all of Expanded, you should really do that. That's what I did. We play 4 copies of Green's Exploration. You can only use it if you have no Pokemon with abilities in play. Search your deck for up to 2 trainer cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. This card is exactly what this deck needed to really get that consistent edge it had, and it's just an incredible card. Just allows you to find your early Battle Compressors, your late game Max Potions and Counter Catchers exactly when you want them. Just an incredible card. You could potentially run more Irida as well, just to like give you extra consistency. Maybe cut like a Marnie for a 3rd Irida. I just play the 4-2 split. I think it's pretty good. You usually start one of them in your hand, and you're off to a rocking start. One of the things I do want to mention here is that you could play Forest Seal Stone in this deck, except for the fact it's bugged. So, how is it bugged? Well, Forest Seal Stone, unfortunately, counts as you having an ability in play, despite the fact it's not on your Pokemon in play. Yeah, it's bugged. If you have Forest Seal Stone, you can't use green. So, I cut the Forest Seal Stone after realizing that the bug was there. Maybe it's not a bug, but I'm pretty sure that's a bug, because Forest Seal Stone should not count as an ability on your Pokemon in play because it's on a tool card, similar to the way that you should not be able to turn it off with Path of the Peak because it's not on your Pokemon in play. So, yeah, green. Good card. You should play it. 3 copies of Lusamine here. Put 2 in a combination of supporter and stadium cards from your discard pile into your hand. Great for recovering our supporter cards, allowing us to loop great cards like Green, Avery, Gladion, and Cheryl is a huge one. Another one that we really love looping here is our Stadium Tower of Waters. I did originally play Brooklet Hill in the original list and only 1 Tower of Waters. I've bumped it up to 2 Tower of Waters. Tower of Waters is just so important, being able to keep that free retreat up all game, so you can retreat your Vaporeon into Golduck. It's just super important, and you want to be able to have 2 of them. That way you can always have one, and if your opponent has 1 copy of Faba, you can hopefully at least get one back into play. You have more outs to counter Chaotic Swells then with Lusamine. It's great. 3 copies of Lusamine is pretty ideal because you don't want 2 and then prize 1 and be forced to get it. You want 3 so that you can always use the Lusamine loop. You're always Lusamine looping in this deck without fail. 2 copies of Cheryl. Heal all damage from each of your evolution Pokemon, then discard all energy. Be careful that you're not doing that when your Golduck has energy and damage on it, because you don't want to leave the Golduck and play with no energy. That would be bad. Mainly here for healing your Vaporeon VMAXs so they can take a hit, yum 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 yum, eat it up, and then you heal them for lots of damage. Not really looking to like get a max use out of Cheryl. You're not going to like switch between your Vaporeons and get like 300 damage on each of them. Nah, you don't really want to chance that. Just heal your Vaporeon. Every time it takes a hit, just heal it up, and you're good to go. I'm going to move this one up here. We're going to talk about this first. 1 copy of Center Lady. This is what I'm playing instead of Forest Seal Stone, because I ran into a checkmate when retesting this deck, and that is special conditions. If you can't attack, if your opponent's like confusing you, that's really bad. If your opponent's paralyzing you, also really bad. If your opponent's poisoning you for a significant amount, something like a severe poison for 4 or 8 damage counters, you don't love that. So we play Center Lady to get out of that, hopefully give us the buff we need. This could potentially be a bunch of other supporters cards if you want it to be. I think Center Lady is pretty good, so that's what I'm playing. 1 copy of Gladion here. Look at your face down prize cards, put one of them into your hand, then shuffle Gladion into your remaining prize cards, put them back face down. Just allows you to grab a single card you need. Potentially could be buffed up to 2 copies, but you really just don't have the space, so you play 1 copy of Gladion. Generally, you're not too resource intensive on the prizes. However, if you do prize these guys, that can be a bit difficult, especially if you prize 2 Vaporeon VMAX like I did in 1 game. That was not very fun. So, yeah, keep in mind 1 copy of Guzma, switch one of your opponent's bench with their active, and then switch your active on your bench, just so we can pick our opponent's Pokemon to gust. We do have Counter Catcher in here, however, it's nice to have Guzma as well. That way we can recover it over and over again with Lusamine. Pick the exact Pokemon we want to bring up, and use that Entangled Dive on Golduck on. Alrighty, 4 copies of Ultra Ball. This is our search of choice because it discards our Water Energy and Golduck to the discard pile if we have them in hand. So discard 2 cards from hand, search it for a Pokemon. Great card. We're going to discard it. We're going to probably find our Vaporeon super early, discard our Golducks and Waters into the discard pile unless we don't have any recycles in hand and we need the water to use the attack, so keep that in mind. 4 copies of Battle Comp. Search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. Got to get that Golduck in the discard pile. Got to get Waters in the discard pile early. Don't overdo it with Battle Compressor. You don't want to like throw away your whole deck and then be reliant on using Lusamine not to deck out late game, but it is a very good card for getting that early setup. 4 copies of Max Potion, heal all damage from one of your Pokemon, discard all energy from that Pokemon. Same thing as Cheryl, but it's only for 1 Pokemon, and usually that's all we need. Cheryl is just obviously better because you can loop with Lusamine and first Seeker, whereas Max Potion is basically limited to 4 copies per game unless you can get a Bunnelby in the active, just use a bunch of Rototillers. Oh yeah, 2 copies of Counter Catcher. Pretty good card. You can only play it if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. Really, really good card. Allows us to pick whatever we want to bring up to the active spot and delete it with our Golduck. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from this pile into your hand. Allows us to reuse valuable supporter cards, especially Cheryl and Guzma are the ones we're going to be wanting to reuse most. As well as greens, though, just to search our trainers out of the deck. Especially really good. 2 copies of Trainers Mail. This is actually a leftover. I talked about it in the other video, too. This is a leftover from this deck being originally an Archie's deck. I originally built this as an Archie's Ace in the Hole deck, which allows you to put water Pokemon into play. Let's just go reveal the Archie. There he is. You can only play it when it's the last card in your hand. Put a water Pokemon onto your bench, then draw 5. So it's really an Archie's deck, but the problem is that that just wasn't consistent at all. But the Trainer's Mail is still here because it still helps us find our pieces, though you could very easily swap this out for item tax. You could easily swap this out for a supporter of choice, but I like the extra consistency of Trainer's Mail, so I haven't cut it from the list at all. 2 copies plays pretty fine. 1 copy of Stretcher. Things go wrong, you can get a Pokemon back from your pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your pile into your deck. Usually you're going to be doing the latter if you lose a Vaporeon VMAX line, for instance, or the former if you want to get a Bunnelby back for a quick burrow. 1 copy of Wait and See Hammer. Bro, I saw someone trashing on this card. People think this card's bad. It is not. When expanded games are sometimes decided by that first turn, Wait and See Hammer, incredible. Obviously, you want to go second anyway when you're playing this deck, but one of the things I said at the beginning of this video is that if your Vaporeon Vs just get knocked out super early, you're kind of screwed. So why not play a card super early that stops your opponent from knocking out your Vaporeon Vs? In comes Wait and See Hammer. It's actually better than you might think. You can only use it on your first turn and only if you go second, and you get to discard an energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. Notice though, we have 6 cards that can find Wait and See Hammer. Turn 1. 6 outs right here. Trainer's Mail, more outs, the Wait and See Hammer itself. Yeah, we can find that pretty consistently. Turn 1. It's a good card. It saved me tons of games. You should play it. 1 copy of Dowsing Machine. Discard your cards from your hand. Put a trainer card from your pile into your hand. This gives us a 5th Max Potion, a 3rd Counter Catcher, among other things. Obviously, we can get more of those with Bunnelby, but Dowsing Machine is definitely the A-spec to play here. Just allowing you to get a trainer card back really just helps your resources. Also, this is the best Dowsing Machine design in Gen 5. For anyone who's played the games, you know how OP this Dowsing Machine is. It's so easy to use. It's incredible. I love this Dowsing Machine. 2 copies of Float Stone. The Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat. This is really big. Again, our retreat cost is a problem. We need to be able to retreat from our Vaporeon into Golduck. So if our stadium gets bumped by a swell, Float Stone's our second option to get in there. If only we had a special energy that could do that and also be recovered. Unfortunately, things are not that perfect. A tool you could maybe consider in here is like an HP buffing tool, such as like Big Charm. I can't think of any other HP buffing tools that would specifically work better with Vaporeon, but if you give yourself a little bit extra HP, it can maybe help the V survive its first attack, and you maybe help the VMAX survive over the long term of the game. Main problem with playing a big tool card to boost your HP is that if you get stuck in the active, it doesn't matter if you have more HP, so we play our retreating cards. And yeah, there's the other retreating card, we talked about it earlier. Gives your Rapid Strike Pokemon 2 less retreat. Oh wow, look at that, 2 retreat, that's crazy. Check this out, 2 retreat, whoa, that's crazy. It gives you free retreat, that's, oh my god, that's so cool. That's so cool. It's almost like I built this deck with intent. 2 copies of Recycle Energy provides colorless energy. If it's discarded from play, put it into your hand. So this means that if this sucker's on your Vaporeon VMAX and you Max Potion it, goes back to your hand. If you Cheryl it, goes back to your hand. You can even put this on your Golduck. If you only have 2 energies in this card, you get this in play with 2 energies. Put it on an Entangled Dive and you get your Recycle back to hand. It's pretty good. 6 copies of Water. Yeah, 6 copies plays pretty good. You need 3 in discard for 1 Golduck. If you don't prize any energy, you can get all 6 in the discard and then set up 2 Golducks. I've only done that a couple of times, but it is a thing you can do. And yeah, that's the deck. Works pretty fun, a lot of fun discarding your opponent's Pokemon from play. Just ravage them, make them seethe, make them mauled. And they're not going to be having a good time while you're having a great time, as long as you don't face something that just KOs you immediately. So beware of that. Thank you guys so much for watching, though. I'll hopefully get back to doing expanded deck profiles next month. However, it is a bit busy now. I'm traveling for the holidays. Just figured I'd get this one out before I go. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.